the point. But it's Sunday, the 14th of March, 2021. I'm here with my friend Mark Horn, who, as you know, most people, he doesn't like to use the word specialist, because Mark is just considering himself to be a person who is trying to help people to understand not just the law in common, but all the other associated articles that go with that. We are pleased to say that we're joined today by two people who are experts in a particular subject. We're joined by Jackie Phoenix and Gillian Allen. Jackie's kindly flown all the way from Canada, not to talk to us. She just prefers to live in Scotland at the moment. And one of her associates, Gillian Allen. Morning, ladies. And the purpose of today's meeting is that we've said that this is a genuine meeting because Mark and I have worked very closely with Mark's offerings on the laws and rules of equity. And Jackie obviously is a specialist in Article 61. I
wouldn't exactly call myself an expert. We're all learning on this together.
Well, that's a great way to put it, and I think that probably the reason that Article 62 slipped in just there, I was actually about to make a joke, and I peaked too early. I was about to say that if we couldn't all agree on Article 61, I was going to suggest that maybe the four of us write Article 62. Just for the sake of our audience, if this becomes a video that we feel we would like to share, and I'll just tell any viewers that if this does go live, that we've agreed this morning that this meeting is incredibly authentic because Mark and I have not met with Gillian or Jackie at all previous to this. So neither parties knows anything about the other. So we've had a laugh and a joke and said that we promise to keep this civil. If no one's in agreement, it doesn't matter. And as Jackie kindly pointed out, this is nothing other than a learning curve. None of us were born experts in the law. And I think the general public would agree as well, is that although we believe that there is an incredibly good system out there, it's not being applied. So are we talking here about the normal law? Are we talking about the law of the commoners? Are we talking about divine law, etc., etc., etc.? But obviously, Jackie is very, very familiar and up to speed with Article 61. So what I suggest we do today then, guys, is if each of us sort of give our takes and opinions on what we know so far, and I'm probably the least most educated from a time point of view. I've been really introduced to the law of the commons pretty much over the course of the last 8 months by working alongside people like Jesse Casanova and Chris. Most people have heard of a Warrior Calls. Back in the early days, back in March, April time. I've been working closely with Michael and Mark Horn from the middle part of this year. So, you know, both of us are very much familiar with Article 61, but it'd be interesting. So I thought, being the layman, if I gave my thoughts and opinions on what I not only know, but have been taught by some lovely, kind people, including Mark, to try and educate me, I'm just going to give the really quick, short story. So, I think that it's relevant that we go back before we go forwards. You know, I'm aware that the original Magna Carta, I'm aware of the reasons why it was written, and I'm not going to go into any detail. If anybody wants to jump online, they can soon find out why it was written. But allegedly, it was written under duress. And obviously the barons who were told by the king at the time is, I want some money and you're going to go and get some, otherwise the Pope won't let me go to heaven. And the barons
actually said, well, that's false. Well, that is completely false.
I'll be interested to hear your take on that. And what I'm trying to say, Jackie, being quite light-hearted, is that the majority of people they see that as the history of the Magna Carta. And
yes, well, that's the thing, right? We've been lied to for centuries. So, and that's what they want people to believe. They don't want us to use the remedy at hand. So yeah, they've used lies, deception, and misdirection throughout the centuries to try to mislead us away from our Constitution. Yeah. Article 61 is a peace treaty. Magna Carta is a peace treaty. Okay. Yeah. All peace treaties are written under duress, but that does not mean that King John had a knife to his throat. He got on a horse and he rode horseback to meet the barons at Runnymede. His life was not in danger, because nobody whose life's in danger does that. Okay.
I mean,
he was going to lose his throne regardless. And the barons were not going to fight for England to protect a tyrant. And that's the fact of the matter.
What's an interesting point you brought up so far, Jackie, and this is something which should be interesting to talk about in the future, about the amount of lies we've been told. As we know, obviously man's been to the moon, and all wars have not been fabricated, and 9/11 is the truth of what you've heard, and medical practices are the best thing to do to heal you. So I would certainly condone that everything that we've ever been taught is a lie. So, you know, basically all I was trying to say to you from a layman's perspective before I got involved in this, the story that people have been told is exactly that, which is the king was under duress, and therefore Article 61 was introduced by the following king to say, well, you're not under duress now, and we're going to make some changes. I think that
actually King Henry was a 9-year-old child, and he removed Article 61 from the Magna Carta.
Yeah, this is why it's going to be interesting to talk to you today, because as you said before, is that what people have been told and what the laymen seem to understand on that. It'd be interesting if you could give us a potted history of your understanding of Article 61. And more importantly, the reason why I ask it in this way, going back to lay people, which most people who are going to be watching this video, they will be lay people, is this real understanding of why Article 61 is important and why it should be understood and applied today. Because, you know, if you think about, let's use Mark's example here now. If you think about Mark using his teachings of the rules of equity and serving cease and desist papers, people have got a simple understanding of that and they can see the logic behind it. When someone to a layperson mentions Article 61, they go, well, what's that got to do with the 21st century? That was something that happened back in the 12th and 13th centuries. What is that relevant to today?
The fact is, Article 61 is the only law that actually protects us. It is the people's protection. And it states that no one is above the law, not even the king. It holds everyone to account. And our true common law system is a system of equity. Yes. Are all people equal in the eyes of the law? That's equity. It's not about what you have. It's about everyone being equal in the eyes of the law. And that's the thing. If you look at our current system, these people like Matt Hancock, they think that they're above the law. Mm-hmm. And even the police have been told, if it's anything political, we can't look at it. Well, that puts politicians above the law. Mm-hmm. Article 61 is the highest constitutional law ever written. It is the security clause. Every crime has a law that deals with that crime. Treason is the worst possible crime that can be committed. It's even worse than murder because it's the death of an entire nation. And in this case, the entire kingdom. So Article 61 is the law that deals with the crime of treason. It's very, very simple.
Okay, so if we were to, let's say, for instance, and obviously is an opportunity, because obviously, not apart from the fact that people need to understand Article 61, what is the actual application of that then, Jackie? So let's imagine that you were the one and only person today that could actually teach someone Article 61 and show them how to apply it. How would you do that, and who would you be calling upon?
Okay, well, first, Article 61 is an instruction manual to the people. Okay, this document is forever binding and it predates Parliament. It's clearly forever binding. It's stated in Articles 1, 61, and 63. Therefore, it can never be changed, period. So, and we know that it's still binding because the Queen wouldn't have answered the Barons' petition if it wasn't. We wouldn't have celebrated a dead document. And there was billions spent in 2015 to celebrate Magna Carta. They even printed coins. Australia put up a complete monument. It was even celebrated in the Republic of Ireland. That's because it is our Constitution. Article 61 being the security clause, and it is forever binding, clearly stated in Article 61. So the Barons knew that this tyranny was going to happen again in the future. So Article 61 is written in simple instructions so that future generations know how to deal with this crime. And it's 3 simple instructions. I'll only give you 2 on here because we're doing a redress tour to give out the 3rd one. We can't give out the plan publicly. Step 1, take the oath. Step 2, collect the evidence. Step 3, restore the rule of law. And that's all I'm going to put for step 3.
That's absolutely fine. So what do you suggest, and how do you feel that this should be applied then? Because obviously when people understand obviously the Article 61 being related to the barons, what is the baron's responsibility then in the current day?
Okay, well, the Article 61 clearly states that because it is forever binding, there must forever be a quorum of at least 25 barons, and their job is to oversee what the head of state is doing.
Yeah.
The head of state is what we think of as the monarch. And again, there's a lot of misconception and deceit there, because the head of state is actually supposed to be elected by the people. There is no bloodline, lineage, hereditary privilege thing. It's not supposed to go to the next heir. It's supposed to be elected, just like we elect a prime minister. So there's a lot of deception throughout the centuries. But yeah, the job of the barons is to oversee what the head of state is doing, because it's a job. They are in service to the people, just like any other public servant. And it's the role of the head of state is to protect our sovereignty and make sure that our common law justice system, our proper court du jour, is upheld, because only the people can create laws. And that's done via jury nullification in a proper court du jour. Sure. And those trials are all public. And if you see what they're doing right now, they're having closed door corporate hearings. They're not. And you can see, if you go on to the Bar Society website, you can see their representation of Lady Justice standing there with the scales and a blindfold over her eyes. Well, how can you see justice done when you can't even see the evidence? It's a complete sham. So a true proper court du jour, justice can actually be seen to be done. If somebody is brought before the jury for breaking an act or statute, and the jury comes back with a not guilty verdict, then that act or statute immediately starts the process to be removed from the statute books.
Yes.
And then we have something called common law private prosecution, where any member of parliament that was involved in creating that legislation that's been deemed unfair by the jury can then be privately prosecuted by any member of the public free of charge.
Mm-hmm.
That is true accountability on our politicians. And that is the rule of law that we need to restore by using Article 61. So when the monarch is not upholding that common law justice system that puts the people in power, our court du jour, then it is the job of the barons to invoke Article 61 for the people to use. Our oath is not to the barons, it is to the Constitution via the barons. Just like every public servant swears an oath to the monarch, their oath of office is actually to the people via the monarch. Because the monarch swears an oath to us. The barons, they swear an oath to the Constitution.
Good. Mark, do you want to jump in and retort back to that?
I mean, a lot of what you've said actually is part of the common law and was reinforced in 2019 in the Boris Johnson judgment, where it very clearly says that the king hath no prerogative but that which the law of the land allows him, indicating the limits of prerogative powers were set by law and were determined.
Actually, that's all high treason, because the whole purpose is that royal prerogative. That royal assent is what is supposed to stop these unlawful acts and statutes from ever seeing.
Can I just finish? Okay. because it goes on to say the courts have exercised a supervisory jurisdiction over the decisions of the executive for centuries. So that makes it absolutely clear exactly what you've been saying is actually part of the current law and was reaffirmed in the Boris Johnson prorogation case, which was brought by private people against the Prime Minister. So we do have the system you talk about actually in place. And with a private prosecution with Michael, it cost us nothing to bring the claim.
And was there any arrests?
No, because the judge...
Exactly. Criminals don't punish themselves.
No. You just spoke about blind justice, okay? The judge correctly ruled that we did not have the evidence, which is exactly what you were saying about having the scarf over the eyes. We did not have the evidence, the prima facie evidence that Matt Hancock knew before the 16th of March, 2019, that COVID-19 had been removed from the highly contagious infectious diseases list. So exactly what you've described, I've actually experienced. And, you know, the rule of law is there. I certainly agree.
Actually, no, it's not, because there's supposed to be a proper
Sorry, the
court de jure
process,
jury trial in every single courtroom throughout the entire Commonwealth. Not just one case here or one case there.
No. I'm talking about the Supreme Court. It's an 11-judge unanimous common law ruling. This is not.
Okay, well, again, that is not a court de jure.
It's not a court de jure.
It is a court de jure.
It's not.
They run it live on live stream these things.
I think first of all, if I could just
judges, they're not the people.
If I could just jump in, Jackie, I think first of all, I think what Mark was saying is he agrees with what you were suggesting. I think he was
I
using.
believe we actually have it in place. We just don't.
Well, we don't.
If we had it in place,
if the rule of law was in place, the barons would have come back and said,
no, sorry.
Is no longer in effect.
What I was saying, what I meant, okay, to be more specific, the system you described, I believe, is in place. I agree that it's not being used correctly, and therefore we appear not to have the rule of law. I agree with you on that. However, I disagree that we don't have the system.
Criminals running it.
Well, no, it has to be in every single courtroom, because that's the thing. All courts are common law jurisdiction. So every single person that is brought before the court needs to be faced with a common law court de jure jury of their peers, not elected judges.
Yeah.
No, but the judges.
There is no jury nullification there.
There is jury nullification in there if you read it under the case of
not the proper jury nullification. No.
Okay.
We wouldn't have
at the end of the day
regulations if our rule of law was in place. It wouldn't happen.
But the rule of law is about enforcement. If we sit on our asses and let these guys,
the rule of law is about putting the people in power over government.
And they are
the people that make the laws.
And the Supreme Court has given you the tools.
There are no lawful courts.
At this time and present, there's no lawful courts until we restore the rule of law.
I'm sorry,
exactly.
I've got.
And our Constitution is an instruction manual. Article 61 is an instruction manual. 3 simple steps. If people can't do that, then I guess we don't deserve our freedom.
I think the monarch has made that clear. The monarch says
I think first of all,
the whole monarch. She was fired.
The whole point of this meeting is to actually try to provide that clarity, and we can only get that clarity if each person expresses their own views on what's going on out there. I think what Mark was saying is that the initial plan with the PCP that was put forward by Michael and himself was actually to prove that the law did still stand.
And we've got confirmation from the judge that the process is there, the system is in place. We were just missing primary evidence.
Well, under our proper court de jure, there's no such thing as a judge.
You need to understand how the system works, okay? Because
I do understand how the system works.
okay, there's something called due process. You can't just bring vexatious claims, okay? Because for obvious reasons, if we just start making vexatious claims, the court system will just get clogged up. So there's a process whereby it's checked first, is it lawful, what you're bringing? And with a private prosecution, it's absolutely lawful for a private person, which is exactly what Jackie described earlier. Okay, as private people, I brought that, as a private person, I brought that case. It was in my name.
Okay, well, that's not
I'm
how
telling
it works.
you,
The jury
no,
has
it
to
is how it
deem
works.
the
No,
law
let's do one
as
step at a time,
unlawful
Jackie.
in order to be able to prosecute the members of parliament that were involved in creating that legislation. There are no lawful courts, and criminals do not punish themselves. I'm sorry, but it doesn't happen.
No, I was the prosecutor, Jackie, not the government. The Attorney General could not interfere in my case. I've got written
I
confirmation.
think you're missing the whole point. You're just trying to justify what you are doing instead of learning the truth.
Yeah, no, I've experienced it, Jackie.
And
I've got it in
on here
writing.
to help you guys understand how this is actually supposed to work. If you don't want to listen to what I have to say,
explain to me.
Why was I even brought on here in the first place?
Yeah, okay, so explain to me the process that you're describing. How on earth should I bring as one of the people this case against Matt Hancock? Please describe.
You can't.
Oh, I can't.
We have to restore the rule of law first, because
Okay,
criminals do not punish
how-
themselves, and Matt Hancock will not be arrested. It doesn't matter how many times you walk into that courtroom. All
So
you're doing is walking into McDonald's and handing them money.
Under Magna Carta 1215, how exactly is the system supposed to work?
Well, you'll have to get to a redress meeting and find out what we need to do
I'm
then.
sorry, that's pretty.
Because it's three
really
simple instructions, and yeah, take the oath, collect the evidence, and use Article 61 to restore the rule of law. We do not have the rule of law. I don't care how many times
I agree.
you think that the Supreme Court has it in place. It is not in place.
I'm sorry, on February 24th, the High Court in Cardiff ruled against the police that
There you go, back to the unlawful courts. Every time you mention these corporations, you're aiding and abetting.
Can just bear me out, okay? The court ruled that it's unlawful for the police to demand your name if they cannot, if they do not have a cause for action.
At the very beginning. That was unlawful in 1215.
Correct.
We don't need a corporation to
It's
tell
not a
us that it's
corporation,
unlawful.
The court has said and agreed.
You're begging permission from criminals.
Well, I mean, you know, the court said that the police are acting unlawful.
Again, you're running to the criminals.
No, I'm not.
There are no lawful courts. They are corporations.
No. I think there's a misunderstanding here between the rule of law, which is about having the law enforced. Okay.
No, that is not the rule of law.
People in law, it's having the people in power. We need to have.
Well, explain to me then what's law?
Instead of these acts and statutes,
Acts and statutes are not law, and they tell you they're not law. They tell you they're only advice and guidance. If you read the Parliament and Crown Recognition Act 1689, it tells you it is not law. They're not telling you it's law.
And again, you're quoting unlawful acts and statutes.
I'm not. I'm quoting what they're telling you, Jackie. They're telling you it is not law. Okay, they're fully in agreement with what you're saying. There's no dispute. They agree.
I think the point that Mark is making here is just going back to what people are actually buying into at this moment in time, Jackie and Julian, is that they are quoting they are quoting legislations and acts which are not law. Mark was just trying to explain to you that the attempt of putting that case against Matt Hancock was to find out if there was still a standing of law, of which he feels that the actual structure that came back, there was a question initially on the form, and then secondly from there was a further request for prima facie evidence. So keeping this into simple terms, I think Mark's just trying to explain to you what he did and why. Your argument and your concern is that no one should ever be approaching any courts, because you're saying that all of the courts themselves are acting themselves unlawfully. What Mark was trying to do was to try to prove if the law still stood or not. So that's why I said today is all about making sure that we can only talk about what people have either done, applied, or learned from what's been achieved so far over the course of this year. More importantly, what we should be looking at now, and I hear what you're saying, I hear your passion, Jackie, is that if you don't understand that the courts themselves are acting unlawfully, you're wasting your time dealing with them. And so I hear the way that I really do hear that. So I think what I'm saying is we need to calmly address this in a way to say, let's make sure that everyone has got a core basic understanding. Otherwise, it's a waste of time and energy. So the whole purpose of this meeting was to say that different people have got different opinions. They need to be discussed so that we can actually come up with an outcome to ensure that either any process has been done so far was obviously a waste of time, but more importantly, what can we do about it now? So no one's questioning
following Article 61.
You're either standing in law or you're not.
Okay, so explain.
Exactly. Article 61 is the only law in effect. You're either obeying it or you're not. It's that simple.
Yeah, no, but explain then, how would you get Matt Hancock locked up under Article 61? And why hasn't it happened yet?
They're all going to be arrested very soon because the people are going for redress.
The
people are going for redress, and that's why I'm doing this redress tour, so that I can get people prepared so that they know what to do when the call to action comes. Article 61 is an instruction manual. It tells us exactly what to do.
And what we can do just now is do the groundwork. What we need to do is take the oath, collect the evidence, do the groundwork.
Well, I mean, personally, I don't take an oath because I'm sorry, I'm not subservient to anybody for starters.
It's not the oath is to the Constitution. It's a declaration of intent.
Yeah.
There's only one law in effect. You're either obeying it or you're not. So when there's only one law in effect, how do you prove that you're obeying the law?
What law is that?
Of intent.
It's the highest, it's your common law using Article 61. That's the only law that we should be standing under.
Yeah, what is that law? Sorry, explain that law to me, please. I still don't get it.
The security clause.
Yeah, explain it, please. I don't get it.
The common law is your natural law that comes, everyone's born with it.
Common law is a very specific definition. It was introduced by Henry I as stare decisis. And then in the late 1500s, just early 1600s, Lord Ellesmere introduced conscience and equity into the judgments. So what do you mean by common law?
Common law is common sense. We're all born with it.
Exactly.
Well, I tell you, I've traveled a lot around the world.
Right of knowledge,
and common
of right, wrong, and fairness. That and the common law is our conscience tapping into natural law. That's what it is.
I mean, we're in agreement
based then on principle.
Yeah, so we're all in agreement. I think we're talking about what you call in common law is actually the rules of equity recognized in the court.
No.
Sorry, I thought you just said conscience. Did you not say conscience? What we feel, natural law.
Go watch the William Keat video, because this is actually starting to really stress me out. I got a lot of work to do, and you absolutely have no interest in actually learning anything today. So I think you need to go do some research, and then we can come back and address this again.
Yeah, well, I mean, it would be interesting if you could, put some substance to it, because I've just heard articles.
Well, I'm trying to, but you keep fucking backtracking and going your own way.
You know what's common law? Explain common law, common sense. Okay. Now I've traveled a lot in the world. Okay. I've seen people wash electric plugs with water. Okay, because they're not familiar with electricity. to you and me, it might be common sense. To them, they're not. It's something new. So one thing I do know is common sense is not very common.
Common law, cause no harm, cause no loss.
Agreed. That's absolutely agreed.
Keep the peace. That's what your common law is.
Yeah. And in
All right.
equity, it's expressed, equity acts in personam, and for every wrong, there's a remedy. It's exactly the same thing. We're talking about the same thing yet. I don't understand what's the
Well,
problem.
the only remedy right now is Article 61. It's the only law in effect. Simple. You're either obeying it or you're not. There's no fence sitting on this.
So where can
And,
we get,
and
where
when the
can
people get
it
redressed,
enforced?
here's a question for you.
Yeah,
When the people get redressed,
yeah.
there will be an announcement throughout the entire Commonwealth for the people to submit their evidence under Article 61. Do you have any evidence under Article 61?
Well, hang on, to bring it.
No, I asked you a question. Do you have any
Not under
evidence
Article
under Article
61.
61?
No.
No, then you're aiding and abetting high treason. Simple.
Right, so hang on, if I understand what you've just said correctly, okay, you first declare something unlawful and then you're collecting the evidence. Surely you collect the evidence before you declare something unlawful.
I didn't say that at all.
I'm saying you remove yourself from the.
Article 61 is already in effect due to high treason.
Yeah,
Yes. So we, the people, are supposed to be standing under Article 61 and collecting the evidence under Article 61.
So
That
what,
is the 5 notice process that we use
yeah.
to prove that they are committing high treason. When we
But
have
hang on, I
redress,
thought you've
there
already
will
said
be
they've
a
committed high
Commonwealth-wide
treason,
announcement for the people of the Commonwealth to submit their evidence. Anyone that does not have evidence is going to have to answer to the jury as to why.
Okay, so how did the court or whoever determine that high treason's actually been committed? Where's the evidence for that? How did somebody reach that decision?
Where's the evidence of that? You want to see the evidence of that? I've got 3 flipping binders full of evidence of that.
Yeah, okay. So, and who made that decision? You know, which court has made the decision that they acted treasonous? Somebody must have made that decision.
See? Look, read the documents. It's in there. Taking every single one of your rights and freedoms away. This is all evidence of high treason. Every last bit of it, evidence of high treason.
I agree. It may well be evidence, but you stated.
All you have to do is read it.
Jackie,
There's the SQV Act that puts you dead, lost at sea. High fucking treason.
Jackie, you've said that there already is the ruling that high treason has occurred, correct or incorrect?
Yes.
So what?
Because people are smart enough to read the damn documents.
It just sounds like a circular argument. Collect the evidence to show there's high treason, but before you can determine it's high treason.
Oh my God, not listening. Cognitive dissonance. I'm out. Goodbye.
Okay, lovely meeting you. Bye.
Bye.
Jackie's really just passionate about it. I think the evidence is there. I mean, if you don't,
I agree. There's no rule of law, Juliana. I agree.
The rule of law first. That's what we need to do. We need to restore the rule of law. We need to get our court jurors back in the court. We need to have our people, not a judge. It should be a conveyor. It shouldn't be a judge who's sitting there making. They can't be judge and judge and educate.
Okay. Right, I've got 2 things going at the moment. Okay, let me just explain first how the due process of law worked with Matt Hancock. Okay, if I make a vexatious claim, okay, if I just make frivolous bullshit up, it shouldn't even get to court. Agreed or disagreed?
Yeah, but we're not being specific on Matt. We're talking about the treason.
No, but the same principles apply. Will apply.
But we need to get our courts back so that we can bring these people to our
what I'm saying is the due process is had we had an email or some evidence that Matt Hancock knew before the 16th, then it would have gone to trial. in front of a jury to determine.
This is not just to do with coronavirus. I mean, this treason's been happening for many, 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 many years, and that's the evidence we've
Yeah,
got.
no, but what I'm saying is we have the system in place. The only reason Matt Hancock wasn't arrested was because we did not have prima facie evidence that he knew before he introduced that bill into Parliament. Okay, had we had that evidence, he would have been arrested and there would have been a trial in the Crown Court in front of a jury. So the system is there. I've had confirmation of this from the judge. They've absolutely agreed.
There's no government anyway. There's no government. They're all criminals acting as government at the moment. They were all, you know, in 2001, 23rd of March, the government was they were dissolved and the monarch was dethroned, and you know they're acting as criminals. So
I agree that they act as criminals. I mean, we've just had another court ruling, also in February, that said that Matt Hancock and Boris Johnson have acted unlawfully. The judges and courts have agreed with you. They agree with what you're saying. Okay.
What we're doing is we're trying to restore the rule of law, and the way that we're going to be restoring the rule of law is we're getting under oath, we're collecting the evidence, i.e. notifying the cops and the courts of our lawful standing, and we're removing ourselves from their legally system. We're putting them on notice of the treason. We've got all the evidence documents. We're sending all the evidence documents. We're giving them the chance to stand with us, you know.
No, I agree. People need to be aware.
Tells you when you're asked, when the time comes, everybody will be asked to bring their evidence in to say what evidence everyone has got, and that's what she means by, have you got your evidence? Have you sent your lawful objection? Have you sent your all your evidence off? And all
that's precisely what we're doing with the cease and desist orders. Exactly that. We believe these actions are unlawful, and here's the reason why we believe they're unlawful. All that we're doing is...
If I can I just jump in a second, guys? I think that let's just sort of wind back just slightly. The purpose of this meeting was that, and let's just do this, Gillian. Obviously, we were connected with each other to say that each and every one of us is doing our best to try to create some sort of resolve to this matter. It's better that we all work together if we can all actually agree. So the purpose of this meeting today was that we can only express what we've done so far, whether that's right or wrong. And we were going to ask the same of Jackie. Now, if you think about it from, as I've been watching the conversation between Mark and Jackie and listening to that, is the fact that when Mark was trying to explain the process that he took, it was to see if he could prove that the law was still standing. The fact that the actual service of the papers that he put in initially with Michael was actually returned on the basis that initially they had a question about the form, and secondly had a question to say that they couldn't proceed it any further due to the fact that it was lacking an element of prima facie evidence. So that's just one subject. That's a minor issue.
Well, you know, Mike said that they're all acting treasonous already. We don't need anything else. You know, we've got all the evidence there. It's all there.
Yeah, no. All I'm saying, Gillian, is okay. I've tested this, all right, and a standing MP can be privately criminally prosecuted.
Yes.
And the judge has confirmed this.
Yes, but then at the moment they're getting privately prosecuted in these fake courts with a judge.
It doesn't. No. If we would have had the evidence, Matt Hancock would have been tried in front of a jury.
Criminals,
I'm sorry. What's fake about that?
You know, you're going to, right, so you're saying you're going to bring Matt Hancock into a court with a judge who, you know, they're all part of the same gang. They're not going to
no. The jury determines the evidence, not the judge. Not the judge.
If I could,
Matt Hancock, if we would have had that prima facie evidence, Matt Hancock would have faced trial by jury in a Crown Court. And that's precisely what you are saying doesn't exist. I'm sorry,
no,
it does exist.
We need to have the court de jures in every single court. We need to have.
I agree. It should be everywhere and open.
Because if one member of that jury finds the person not guilty, then that act or statute gets thrown out. And that's why all these acts,
Yeah,
yes,
no. Okay, now basically, to get, this is one thing that we're working on with the notice that we're giving, okay, because there are only three reasons that anything can have the effect of law. Okay, firstly, it must be possible. Secondly, it must be rational, and thirdly, it must be reasonable. Sorry. So, as soon as we get a ruling that it's irrational, then that's it. But they've told you anyway that acts of parliament are not law.
Acts and statutes are not law.
Correct, they're not law. Acts and statutes are not law, and you can read it for yourself on the Crown and Parliament Act 1689, last sentence, as such ought to be, means it's not law. They told you this.
Yeah, acts and statutes are not law. I mean, that's
correct. They're not law, and they're not claiming them to be law either.
If I could just finish the point that I was making, which was my area of concern that I was hoping that we could have discussed. The points that Jackie was trying to make there, and I'm sure that Gillian can further confirm this, is that what she was trying to say is that anyone who's actually even approaching an existing court of law is you're wasting your time because the courts themselves are acting unlawfully. Now, I'm not sure why she couldn't explain that simply. And secondly, the other point by saying that unless you, as in everyone, has a responsibility to collect evidence, you're also basically, it's almost that unless you do your bit, you're also guilty of treason yourself because you're supporting them.
Yes, that's it. You fly with the crows, you get shot with the crows. So now that people are aware of what's going on, and you've got an obligation now. You've got a sure.
I agree. We've got an obligation to uphold the peace, and that's where it all starts.
Yeah, you've got an obligation to let these criminals know of the treason being committed. You're giving them the opportunity to stand after you've provided the evidence.
Yeah, exactly the same thing as with the notices. Absolutely.
Yeah, there's a 5 notice process, and that's what we're doing, collecting the evidence, because on the day of redress, the day that all these evidence, somebody will be doing what we're doing on that day, the evidence will be presented to wherever it's being presented to, and they will be asked to look at the evidence and do their jobs and stand with the people and go and investigate the crime with all the evidence. All right.
Yeah, and that's basically in the old days what they used to call a grand jury.
So what we need to do is we need to have the evidence ready. We need to have 12 of our peers in our courts, 12 of our peers, a convener, not a judge, who's judge, jury, and executioner.
No, I mean, a judge really is just a master of ceremonies. That's a fancy name for master of ceremonies. That's all a judge is.
We need to restore the rule of law, Commonwealth. That's why we're doing it, Commonwealth. It's going to be, we can't do, I mean, it's okay, some people setting up these wee common law courts and saying, right, we've got a common law court, but these common law courts, we have already got jurisdiction in all our courts. There's nothing wrong with the system. It's the criminals that's in it that's running the system. We need to get
but this is what I'm saying, Gillian. Okay, I don't see all of this evidence that you appear. I think the courts. Okay, we've had 2 rulings this year. One of them, both in February. One of the rulings, the court said the police are acting unlawful, and then the other ruling, they said Matt Hancock and Boris Johnson are acting unlawful. So I'm sorry, I agree with those decisions. The court is absolutely correct. There's not a problem with the law. That's not where the problem stands.
So if we had our own court de jour, our own people in there, I mean, people like you, people
already
like
the court's in agreement with you.
There would be a convener and they would be arrested, but that's not been the case.
Okay, correct. And this is correct.
They're all criminals, so they're not going to punish themselves.
And this is why I'm distinguishing, okay, between the words of law, because the courts have said the police are acting unlawful. They're in agreement with you. They've said Matt Hancock's acting unlawful.
The courts are acting unlawful as well.
The courts they've agreed with you whether they acted. Yeah, look, whether the courts acted lawfully or not, I'm sorry, they actually made judgments absolutely agreeing with you. How can you dispute that? How can there be a problem with that?
Gillian, just so that you know, I think you knocked your mic off there. That's so you're back now.
Sorry, I had a call coming through.
Yeah, can I just ask a simple question? I think, as I said to you again, the logic of these meetings is people that's sharing their thoughts and the knowledge that they have so far. To me, this I would have thought this seems very simple. So if I was promoting, obviously, people or suggesting that people follow the route of, let's just call it following the route of Article 61, is I don't see why it's so complicated. So what Jackie is trying to say is this: if I can just reiterate what I've heard and try to put this in simple terms for people, it's all about keeping it simple. And if you have the right attitude and approach to explain to people what you think should be done, they're more likely to listen. So if I could actually turn around and say to people, and this is what I need to get my head around now. So what basically has been said so far is the courts themselves are not acting lawfully and that they are acting criminally and within treason. And secondly, is that evidence needs to be collated to serve to them via a court de jure. So I don't see where all the stress is coming from. You know, so if Jackie says, right, this is the evidence that needs to be gathered. So you go down and talk to your local police or your local shop or your local school and actually get evidence of what they're doing, which we've already got. That then needs to be collated and served, but not served in a typical court. Because if you interact with a UK or a Commonwealth court at the moment, you yourself are guilty for interacting with them. I'm just like going, why can't that be explained in very simple terms? I just don't understand why that became a heated exchange at all. And I still don't feel that we've come to a conclusion to whereby to say, well, we now understand Article 61. We now understand what needs to be done. This is what we need to do. I don't understand why we haven't come to that conclusion where all Mark said was, Mark tried to ensure that the courts were actually acting lawfully by putting them to the test. Now, he's further gone on to suggest that not only did he try to put the courts to the test himself, and as you say, there's nothing wrong with the legal or the lawful system, it's those that are actually operating within it. So all Mark has said quite simply there is two things, which is, well, his case was actually, let's call it, kicked out because of the way that it was obviously put together initially by form, and then it was lacking amount of evidence, which you can't go back in time now. But more importantly, there has actually been two prosecutions now made, as he rightfully said, against the police and against Hancock. So we're only telling people what we've seen, you know. So if obviously those people have been found guilty, all Mark's question is, well, when are they going to get prosecuted? You know,
criminally prosecuted. They've been found to be acting unlawfully. Okay, that's established, and the court's in agreement that they're acting unlawfully. The question, quite simply, is why do I have to privately criminally prosecute it? Why is the Crown Prosecution Service not doing their job and prosecuting? Yeah, okay. So the question becomes, how do we enforce the rule of law?
That's where we come in, and we go beyond that. We collect the evidence. We've got all the treason evidence. We've got evidence, not just on
I mean, this is something that does confuse me.
The top, you know.
No, I mean, one thing I'm not clear with is you're saying that everybody's treasonous, but you're collecting evidence for the treason. That appears the wrong way around to me. Either you've got the evidence to come to the conclusion that they're treason.
Article 61 was involved when they were acting treasonous way back in 1215. You know, the evidence is there. The evidence of treason all these years. So everything they're doing at the moment is they're acting treasonous. They are criminals.
Okay, but what I'm saying is, how can you have made the judgment if you're only collecting the evidence? Surely it goes the other way around. You first collect the evidence and then you reach the judgment.
No, the evidence has been there for years, many years. The evidence has been there. It's just never been used. The security clause in Article 61 is a clause for the people to use when the government is
I understand what's the intent behind it. I'm very clear what's the intent behind it. You
Right,
get the
so
25
all the
barons to
evidence-
come and enforce the rule of law.
all the evidence is there why it was invoked and why I mean they mentioned us into the EU in the first place was treasonous and all this.
No,
Brexit
I understand all of that, Gillian. I just either already somebody's ruled that treason has occurred or they haven't. Is
Well, it's
there a
occurred.
ruling?
So do you think it's not occurred?
Well,
Do you
I
not
mean,
think
I think
inflicted on the people?
I think the problem is actually one where we've become just a very tolerant people and we tolerate politicians lying and stealing from us. And we do not know how to enforce the rule of law. I think we've got very good laws in
The
place.
instructions are there in Article 61 how to restore the rule of law. That's why Jackie was saying
Okay, fine. So why are these
there.
so why are these 25 barons not enforcing it then?
They
Why have we
invoked
still got a
Article
problem?
61 for the people. That's what they invoked, that security clause for us to use. Now it's up to us to use it. Allow
Correct,
it.
and this is precisely
And
so
that's why
we
need
so Gillian,
need to
actually
unite.
we actually are in absolute agreement. It's us, the people, that are not enforcing it. We are
Yes,
the problem.
and that's why we need to do our bit. We need to collect it. We need to take the oath, collect the evidence, and seize the buildings. And that's
Well, people can do it without. You don't need to make an oath. You just make a statement of truth.
you can do an oath to self. You can your oath's not you're not taking an oath to the baron. It's via the baron.
I mean,
Constitution. So you're worried about taking an oath when you think
I'm personally, I'm sorry, nobody, I make no oath to anybody. I'm a human being just the same as everybody else. All are equal under the law. Nobody is above the law. I take no oath to anybody. I'm an equal king.
it's to the
you're an equal queen.
Constitution, your Constitution that protects you. What it's your protection. So it's not to anybody.
And no, to me, the oath should be the search of truth, which is equity, which is
Well, your oath
universal
to
law,
self,
which is whatever you want to call it.
Your
Sorry?
oath to self, your oath to self
Yeah.
is just so you can do that. That's your oath. Your oath to self.
No, I don't need to do that. I am me. I don't need to make a bloody oath to myself. That's ludicrous.
You okay. It's your choice. You do, but that's what the Article 61 tells you to do. Take the oath. So Article 61 it tells you the instructions are there. Take the oath, collect the evidence, and seize the buildings until we get our court de jure, until we get
so who's going to make these court de jures and where they're going to appear from, and where are these, where we can take the evidence to?
We will take the evidence. The evidence will go to it could go to the Old Bailey, it could go to anyone, it could go to any of the police. We go to the police and we tell them they have to do their job and they have to investigate the crime. Right? And we have the evidence. And if they can't do that, then they can hand their uniform in because they're not fulfilling their role.
Right. So basically so what we're doing is exactly the same process, except using a 3 notice process. It's exactly the same thing. We're going and saying, here's the evidence, here's the law, do your job.
But we need to do it en masse.
I agree, it needs to be done in mass. Okay, if you do it with a 5-letter process, we do it with a 3-letter process, because that's pretty much, 3-letter process. You only need 2 witnesses to the facts. You don't need 4.
So you've notified them of the treason they're committing.
No,
all right. So,
not treason, the unlawful actions they've committed.
Whatever your notifications is, treason is the highest, it's really it's the worst thing ever, and that's what they're doing on the people at the moment.
Julian, if I could just jump in there and just try to explain.
It actually is very similar what we're doing. It's just that what I'm doing is something that I believe is enforceable in the courts. I've seen it enforced in the courts, and yes, there's corrupt judges in the courts, but like I've just shown you by way of example of 2 judgments in February, the courts have ruled. That is now the common law in the UK, okay, that the police, and that's a reaffirmation of a 1966 ruling. So there's no question about it. You do not need to give your name to a policeman unless they have reasonable grounds to believe that you've broken a law, you've acted unlawfully. And in particular, it's in regards to coronavirus regulations. So it's reaffirmed coronavirus legislation is nothing more than advice or guidance. Okay, but they've told you this in 1689 already, that it's nothing more than advice or guidance. So the law is in agreement with, and I believe correct. So the problem is though, how do we hold the police to account? Okay, the courts are in agreement.
It's not the police we need to hold to account. We need the police on our side. We need the police to do their job.
That's what I mean. We need to hold them to account. So
that's why we need to put the police on notice, and that's why we call it lobby the bobby.
They are on notice already. The court has ruled.
That's your collecting the evidence when you're putting them on notice. That's your evidence.
You don't need to. The court has ruled. That's now the law.
You're going to be asked for all your evidence to say. You're going to be asked at a time when the day of redress comes. Everybody needs to be asked to bring their evidence. What they have as. I
mean, Juliana, the fundamental concepts is not very different.
Far off.
You using a 5 notice thing.
Can I just say something to simplify this, because obviously the length of today's meeting is my simple understanding of this, and this is where I think we need to be in agreement, because it's very, very simple. From everything I've heard so far, let's just go back and look at these two things in their own separate isolation. So the work I'm doing with Mark, Gillian, is just to say that we are serving anyone and everyone, police forces, schools, hospitals, local councils, etc., to say, you must cease and desist immediately with what you are doing unless you can prove your claim upon the people for doing what they're doing. Right. There's nothing wrong with that whatsoever. That's absolutely fine. So that's put that to one side. What Jackie is trying to say is that to almost topple tyranny from the top down. So I suppose you could say that we're working from the ground up, which is to say the police are acting unlawfully, the shopkeepers are acting unlawfully, the schools are, the hospitals are, the local councils are in what they're enforcing. We're just trying to get that ripple effect and domino effect going by getting out there and serving these people. So all I'm asking is that as Jackie understands 100% Article 61, she's suggesting that everybody, she didn't say some people, she didn't say you or her, everybody must collate their evidence together under oath and serve that in a court. So is she asking everyone in the entire Commonwealth to fit in a court and provide their personal information under their oath that they've taken themselves to prove that not only the government are lying, we all know that. Is this a case of trying to prove that the courts are unlawful? So there's no point taking anyone to court whatsoever. At the end of the day, you need to create your own court de jour with your own people within it. And all Mark was trying to say is, well, if that's the case, why haven't you done it already? What are you hanging around for?
Because we need to do it, and it needs to be Commonwealth. You can't do it just here. That's not going to have an effect all over the world. It needs to be Commonwealth. The rule of law needs to be restored, not just in one court or two courts. That needs to be the rule of law.
That's the big picture. I agree.
That's the big picture. So this is why, as at the Commonwealth, we do our groundwork. We notify them of our lawful standing, that we are no part of their legally system. That's what your lawful standing is. You're notifying them, you're removing yourself from their legally system, all right? And then you're giving them the opportunity, you're providing them with the evidence of everything that's going on. There's pages like that of evidence, all right? And they've got an opportunity to stand with us. After that, if they're not standing with us, they're aiding and abetting. So you've done your groundwork, you've notified them, you've given them the opportunity to cure, and then if they're still not curing and they're still not standing with us, they're entering aiding and abetting high treason, all right? So that's you done your groundwork. That's us. Every person needs to do the groundwork on the day of redress.
There's no disputing about the groundwork, okay? We're going about it in two slightly different ways. It's about how do you enforce it?
we're enforcing it, we're getting the word out there, everybody's doing everybody's collecting the evidence. There is going to be a day for redress, and that's why Jack is saying the day for redress, you need to attend the redress meetings to find out what's happening on the day of redress. And it's Commonwealth, it's not just here, it's Canada, Ireland, I mean South Africa, we've got groups, Commonwealth, and there's going to be a day for redress.
Yeah, there will be at the end of
why everything needs, and it will be, but you need to be involved, you need to attend, you need to be there to find out what's happening for redress, what the plan is and how we're doing it.
Can I just answer a simple question? Because as I said to you at the beginning of all of this, trying to get to know Jackie a little bit better, I've actually been quoted as a man of common sense. So my common sense asks a simple question. So once a date has actually been given to people for a date of redress, let's say it's the 1st of June 2021, what happens to all the people who've not been involved in this then, and they've not collated any evidence? If
they've known about it, if they know about the treason that's been committed, they're aiding and abetting high treason, so they will stand trial at the court de jour for aiding and abetting high treason. So that's why it's up to everyone to collect the evidence. Everything needs to have there. If you know about the treason being committed and you're doing nothing about it, then I'm afraid you're aiding and abetting high treason.
Okay, well, you've got about 6.5 billion people that are going to be done for high treason then, because most people are still walking around wearing a mask.
That's why Jackie's doing tours. We need as many people to do this as possible. We need everybody woke up. Jackie's doing tours. That's why she's saying people not need to come. People want redress. They need to be involved. They need to come.
Yeah.
You know.
And the second question I've got, Gillian, is that once that date of redress is given, and 6.5 billion people are now accused of being treasonous because they've supported their own relative governments, is that how, first of all, obviously we're going to be charging 6.5 billion people with treason then, but more importantly,
going to be judged by a group of peers.
Yeah,
of their own, and that's when common law comes into it. You tap into your natural, people will, that maybe, they're going to be judged by people like you and me. Yeah. People could be your granny, 90-year-old that wouldn't have a clue. I mean, they're not going to send wee Granny Jean away to get hung or strung, like that. I mean,
let's first of all imagine that we don't have time to worry about the 6.5 billion mask-wearing people or the doctors who are doing immoral things in hospitals. Let's forget about all of that. Let's just imagine that once the date of redress comes, there's a couple of hundred thousand or 1 million people who have actually been doing wrongful actions out there. Forget about people who've not collected evidence, and I can't see there being a time for that or courts ever big enough. I think there's going to be enough with Nuremberg Part 2 by the time you've actually looked at all the people who have not particularly acted treasonous but acted against their own conscience. So let's talk about all the people in care homes, hospitals, doctors, surgeries. Let's talk about all the people in government, local councils, schools, shops, of people that have actually gone along with this crazy lie of a narrative. I think that the courts are going to be full. Well, I think the courts are going to be full for the next 50 years. So I don't mind being charged with treason myself for not coming up with any evidence, because I'll probably be dead by the time we've actually got rid of the likes of Bill Gates and all the other crooks and criminals that are part of this front end state of tyranny of trying to cull 6.5 billion people. Sorry, let me say again.
I think we need to concentrate on the criminals that's enacting all this on the people. This is the ones that we're going after. We need to bring the government down. We need to bring them. They need to come. It's not innocent people we want to be. I mean, if you're aware of the treason and you're aiding and abetting it, then that's down to you. There may be people out there that's not got a clue, that's sitting stuck to their TVs. I mean, but we need to do our part. We need to collect the evidence, and there is a day coming.
I mean, I think the evidence is pretty self-explanatory.
I think the evidence is there for everyone to see, isn't it?
Everybody can see it.
The same as you could say for yourself, though, when you went and they said only if you had evidence, you would have been able to get these people arrested. I mean, I think it's plain to see, but you need to have the evidence. You need the evidence.
Just one final question then. Once obviously let's call it the day of reckoning. Once the day of reckoning has come, how are these people going to be arrested and tried then? Because obviously
that's why we need the police to stand with us. We need the police to do their jobs, and if they can't do their jobs, they can hand their uniforms in. They're there to protect the people. We are committing a crime. They're reporting a crime. We are reporting a crime. They have got an obligation to look and investigate that crime. The evidence is there. They need to.
This is what concerns me, Gillian. So this is me just being a practical person again. So if the route that Jackie and everyone else supporting this is taking the right route, and that is the right route, then fantastic, congratulations. Great.
That's the same thing.
Can I just finish, Mark? Great for making the effort to not have the knowledge of Article 61. I think that's great. So let's say that the Article 61 route, for want of a better word, is better. That's absolutely fantastic. I actually only question, because I'm keen to do anything I can to help people in general and help humanity.
I think we're all the same. We all want the same end game. It's just getting there, you know.
So my question is as follows then, is that if the police, as we know, the majority of police, well, all of the police are acting unlawfully in the way that they operate anyway, even if they don't understand it themselves, who is it that's going to teach these people to hand over their uniforms then?
You know,
because that's beyond me.
We have the silent majority. Police are just waiting for that day to call, and police will stand with the people. I mean, there's police that the police are natural. Police are human beings, are like us. I mean, they've got families. When that day comes, they can make the choice to stand with us, or else they can hand their uniform. They work for us, the people. You know, we on that day when we're seizing buildings all over Commonwealth until they can do their job and investigate the crime that we're reporting to them with the evidence and going to arrest these fuckers, you know, then we will be there until they decide to hand their uniforms in, until they decide they're going to do their jobs. They need to, and that's why we need mass, and it needs to happen the same day all over, and that's why Jackie's doing what she's doing, tour all over everywhere. We need to get people together all over the world on that same day. The day we go for the dress, we'll be doing what we're doing, and Jackie will be going with all the evidence, reporting the crime, look into it, arrest them. If you can't look in and investigate the crime that's been reported, hand your uniform in. You're not worthy of the job, you know. And we stay there until they do their job, and we do it lawfully, we do it peacefully. And Article 61 is there. This is the instructions. This is your security clause. It tells us to do this. It tells us how to do it. We just need to do it. And that's why we need everybody, we need it en masse. We need people to come together all over the world. And that's why it's so hard. And it's hard to get people have got different ideas and people have got different ways. But you're either standing the law or you're not. There's no two ways about it. There's only one law, and it's the highest law of the land. You know, and we need to be standing all together, doing it in the Article 61.
The only difference, Juliana, is that we're actually not waiting for a day sometime in the future to try and bring these people to justice. We actually hoping within 4 to 6 weeks that we can start to bring individuals to justice. We don't need, to bring the whole world together to do.
But that's not going to change anything, changing one individual person. We need to change the rule of law in our courts. We need to have our court de jures. We need to have our 12. I'm going to send you a few things, a few good videos that I think might be worth watching. I'm not the best at explaining things, to be fair with you. I'm not the best talker, the best explainer, but if we get our court de jures back in there, if one person in that jury finds that person not guilty, that act or statute automatically gets thrown out that act and statute book. And this is why all these acts and statutes are in place. If we had a proper court de jure, we wouldn't have all these unlawful acts and statutes being able to be acted upon us, because they would all be thrown out, you know, because these would be nullified by the jury of us, but that's not what happens. It's a watered down version we've got at the moment.
If we just step back again, they've told you in 1689 that they're not laws. They're in agreement with you. They're not in dispute with you. They've told you it's not.
What's not laws?
Legislation is not law.
We know that.
We're
governed by consent. We're governed by consent.
But you saying that the jury will throw out the statutes and acts, they've already told you they're not law. The government have told you it's not law. So what's there for a jury to throw out? Nothing, because they're in agreement. There's no.
But there would be acts and statutes that's put in place constitutionally by the people that are lawful, but they've got to go through the people. You know, this is why we need our juries in place. If they're okay with our people, the acts and statutes have got to be run by our jury. Court de jure, which they're not happening, or they wouldn't be passed. Would they? They wouldn't be there.
I don't really think I don't think there's much dispute, okay, because fundamentally it comes down to enforcing the rule of law. Okay, it's about how does it get enforced, and fundamentally,
it's not about enforcing anything. It's about having the rule of law in place, protecting the people. The rule of law is the law to protect the people.
No, the laws are there. I see plenty of laws to protect the people. I see the courts throwing out coronavirus things quite correctly. I see the courts ruling that Boris Johnson and Matt Hancock are acting unlawfully. I see the courts doing.
And what they're doing about it, absolutely nothing.
It's not the court's job to do something. It's up to the people.
You compel the police to do their jobs. Compel the police to do their jobs.
We're in agreement that we, the people, need to compel the police to do their jobs. The problem is not the courts. The courts are in agreement that the police are acting unlawful. It's not
the courts are unlawful. There should be no judge.
Well,
it should be a court de jure of the 12 peers. No judge. It should be a convener, somebody to steer that court.
Okay, what are you saying is, why is it bad that the courts have ruled that the police are acting unlawful? You seem to think that this is just totally bad.
I've said it's bad that the courts have ruled that the police are acting unlawful.
That's not the argument. Can I just make a suggestion just to bring this meeting to a close today, because it's not that we've reached a full par. We're in a situation whereby I think there's a slight misunderstanding. So I think what Mark is trying to say, that let's imagine that first of all the courts are acting lawfully. So, and this is where the question has come over. What Mark is saying, from the active process, from the courts that are sitting with the juries that's involved and with the judge sat there, is saying the court, the judge, the jury agree that the police and Boris Johnson have acted unlawfully. Your question then is, well, why haven't they been charged? Let's forget that a second. The point that Gillian is making is that none of the courts in this land or throughout the Commonwealth should actually be sitting in the first place. What they're saying is that because the actual courts themselves are not acting in a correct manner, and they don't even have a right to be there, that's where the main question comes. So I understand this very, very simply. What Mark has done is try to say, right, whilst anything is being sorted out at the top end, whilst everyone's trying to actually alter the way and the process, is that in the short term, the cease and desist notice are making an effort from the ground up to try to stop people from acting against a claim made against the people, which is not a justified claim. So I don't have a problem with either of those. I would love to see this. So anyone that's, I mean, we've got 20, 30, 40 people at the moment going out serving notices. That's great. There's a domino effect that will come off the back of that. It will go to court at the end of the day.
Well, we ask for their evidence, yeah.
Well, absolutely. So that
and that's
will...
evidence for us against these people, to say that we've you know, that's all our evidence against them. That's against all these criminals high up, that we've notified everybody all over the world of all these crimes.
Yeah, and the thing is, if you've got this evidence, if you've got this evidence and it's so good, you can actually do a private criminal prosecution yourself. If you've got all this evidence,
but not in a court, because it's not believed that those courts are actually of legal standing.
Yeah, they're not lawful standing. They've not got our 12 peers in there. They've not got, you know.
Once when you're in a court,
never punish themselves. Criminals never punish themselves.
The Crown Court has a jury which decides. The judge does not decide the facts. I'm sorry.
So one person finds that person not guilty, that man should walk free.
It depends on.
That's not what happens now, and that's what happens with a court de jure.
No, hang on. Okay, what happens is, if it's a civil case, it's got to be on the balance of probabilities, and if it's a criminal case, it needs to be beyond a reasonable doubt. So that's the way the jury works. And it's the jury that
decides. Jury. Not the real juries. The real juries that we want in place.
Juries. You have real people sitting there listening to the evidence, and you have real people there making a decision whether they believe this.
And the fake courts.
Sorry?
And the fake courts, they're sitting there in the fake courts with a judge.
It doesn't matter.
It's not that there's law in place.
The jury still decides the facts. It can be a big courtroom, a small courtroom. It can be outside. It can be inside. It makes no difference. The jury decides the facts.
But the jury don't. That's what right now the jury don't. It's the jury are not getting to decide the facts.
My understanding is the jury is from people selected in society, which is your peers.
So, and what is a watered down version we've got just now? It's a watered down version
Of what?
of a court de jure. One person in a court de jure finds somebody guilty or not guilty.
If it's a
That makes that's the power of the people. If that one person finds that person not guilty, that act of statute becomes nullified. And
but
that's the power of
we've
the
already
people.
established, we're going in circles. We've already established acts or statutes.
Acts of statutes are not law. We know that, but you're not getting the gist of what we're speaking about. There's constitutional law that people have got to pass. You've got to pass through the people. Okay, and
you've agreed that
there's going to have to be a re-education time, a re-education period when we do restore the rule of law. There's going to have to become an educational period where everybody's re-educated.
Well, it really needs to be done before you can have the rule of law. The education needs to be going on now.
No, that's where your common law comes in. You need to have the restore the rule of law before your common law comes into place, and that's where the re-education comes into place.
Yeah, no, but you need to explain to people what's the common law before you can have the rule of law.
Cause no harm, cause no loss, keep the peace, commit no frauds. That's common law.
Yeah.
They four things is your common law.
Okay, correct. That's the law.
Right?
And the question becomes, how do people enforce the law? I keep coming back to this. To have the force.
It's not enforcing anything. It's standing in law and not committing any of these four things. That's your standing in law.
No, we know human beings, don't we? The real world is people don't do that just because you or I say they must do it. So
standing under common law doesn't mean you can go away and do whatever you like. It doesn't give you a free pass to go and do what you like. You still have to stand in law. You still have to stand under these four principles, you know.
Correct. And who's going to enforce it? That's the problem. Okay, this
who's going to enforce what? What we enforce is if people don't, when we have our rule of law back and we have our court de jure, then anybody doesn't stand under common law, cause no harm, cause no loss.
I think 99.99% of the world actually does that. It's how do you get it enforced on that other 0.1%? That's the problem I see.
How do we enforce what? Sorry.
The common law, you know, cause no harm, and how do you enforce that?
You don't enforce it. People are born with that. That's your natural law. That's natural. If you want to go and cause harm or commit murder, that's up to you.
It's natural law.
You can't enforce somebody to be peaceful. Yeah, people need to stand on. You're standing in the law. You're not. You know.
Yeah. Look, I think, like I say, I mean, around the world, and I've seen many people.
We're not.
99.9% of the global population actually lives by that, what you've described. So if 99.9% of the people already live by that, why is there still this mess around?
Because the government are acting treasonous. The government are criminals. The government are.
And this is why I keep coming back.
In their own countries.
Yeah, and
we are slaves in our own country.
This is why I keep coming back to the point. Okay, if 99% of the people are already doing what you're saying, why is this mess here?
Are doing what? What? I don't get what you mean. We're doing what? They're acting lawfully.
Cause no harm.
But that's 1%. That's the hierarchy. That's the most powerful people. That's not.
Okay, and so.
And that's the 1% we need to bring down. These 1%.
So again, back to my question: if 99% of the people are already doing it, how is it going to be enforced?
We don't need to enforce it. If people are acting lawfully, great. We don't need to enforce. Yeah, they're acting lawfully, fantastic. But we were not interested in the ones that are acting lawfully. We want to bring down the ones that are acting unlawfully, because these are the ones that are. Yes.
Okay, then instead of
the ones that are acting unlawfully, how we're going to get them?
Correct.
We're going to collect the evidence, and we're going to go and report the crime, and we're going to compel the police to make sure that they do their jobs, and they go and they investigate the crimes that's been presented to them. They need to investigate.
Yeah, but how are you going to get them to do that? How are you going to enforce that they do it? This is what I'm asking.
Well, this is why you need to come to a meeting. this is things that need to be discussed private. It's not for, you know.
Okay, now we're down to the crunch of it. Okay.
No, we're having a day of redress. We're not going to give dates, times, places, you know. Do you know what I mean? If you want to, that's why Jackie's doing a tour. There'll be a date. The redress is coming. That day is coming.
Totally. Okay, I'm very clear now with that.
That day is coming. The day's coming. And on that day it's coming, we will all be asked to do what we're meant to do, but we know what we're to do because we've been to the meeting. We know what's required all over the Commonwealth at the same day, at the same time.
No, that's brilliant. I mean, the only difference is instead of waiting for some day at some future time, I'm just, or we.
Now we need to do it now, and we're doing it now, and that's what we're doing. We're getting enough people to do it now, and that's why we're connecting worldwide.
Stand up together.
Sorry?
I thought you in the future, once Jackie's been around telling everybody the date and how to get the redress, then everybody's got to stand up together. That's the only what
we are all standing up together, and that's why we're connecting with people, and that's why we're trying to get people to all unite to do it together, you know.
The only difference is we're not waiting for someday in the future. We're using the existing system because fundamentally it's an honest system. That's the only difference between what you're doing and what we're doing.
But so is it actually making any difference worldwide at the moment? Not changed nothing.
If I
don't mean that disrespectful. What I mean is
when you drop a pebble, okay, in a pond, the waves just ripple. It's called the ripple effect. It's got to start somewhere.
Can I just bring this meeting to a close today, guys? Because obviously I'm running late for a 12 o'clock meeting.
Great, Julian. Thanks.
There's just 2 points that I want to make for clarity here. What all that was being said there is that what Mark is saying at the moment, working from the ground up, is that all the people that we're working with have this passion to want and go out and serve cease and desist papers. So that's great. Yeah. Let's crack on and do that. Then all Mark was questioning there is to say that obviously Jackie and the Article 61 team have set a date, and at that date they're going to bring everyone together on a particular date. So all Mark is saying, that's great. When that date comes, that's fantastic. In the meantime, we'll just crack on with what we're doing, and it's working at both ends. So, and if there's a way to bring all of those people together, Gillian, you know, I'm in favour of that. That, you know, those who want to actually understand when D-Day is, that's fine. In the meantime, until D-Day gets here, if you want to come and join us and do the things that we're doing, everybody's happy. So, Gillian, thanks ever so much for joining us today.
No, thank you. I appreciate you having us on. Thanks a lot. Take care.
Yeah,
bye-bye.
Bye for now. Bye.
Bye-bye.
Do you want to turn off